All right, what's going on, guys? Blacklisted Voice, episode 32. We're back on the Zoom call this week. Hopefully, we'll be back in the gym a little bit more professional next time with a nicer camera.
Yeah.
But this week, Logan and I are just going to sit down. We ran some numbers on the quarterfinals, just kind of talk about those, give our thoughts a little bit on them, give our thoughts about quarterfinals in general. If you guys weren't following us, we had a pretty big crew that came down for quarterfinals to throw down. So some of the kind of trends we were seeing from the workouts there, and just kind of overall quarterfinals thoughts. But Logan, you were saying open workouts in the past were traditionally about 11 minutes in length.
Yeah. So the top 1% of all open workouts that have ever happened, the average length is 11 minutes and 51 seconds.
For finishing time, correct?
For finishing time.
Yeah.
Yep. So every finishing time and like if it was an AMRAP, that was also plugged in there too. So just like time domain, like if it was an AMRAP, I plugged it in as like if it was a 9-minute AMRAP, it was a 9-minute workout. And then if it was a finishing time, it was the top 1% time was allocated. So yeah, 11:51. And then last year in 2000, I guess it would be the 2020 Open, the average was 14:57. So like very long. And that was a really long year. Like most years were in upper 10s and like mid 11s, and then last year it was like 15 minutes basically.
And you're saying this for the 2020 Open that happened?
Yes.
What was it, October or?
Yes, the fall Open.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So completely, I mean, very different workouts from quarterfinals and even this Open, and really it really makes for an entire different athlete. And I mean, I think the best example was the Fittest Experience qualifier. It was, heavier weights. I think 3 workouts had machines, and some bigger guys were towards the top. And it was just very interesting. Like, that's kind of like, I think for someone that like, CrossFit just finds the fittest, I think that's a great example of how programming bias can change who exactly is at the top. Now, given the guys at the top of, the Fittest Experience or the Open or whatever Open year are still very fit, but it's very interesting to see. I mean, you had an entire slew of CrossFit athletes at the top. They might have been, towards the middle, and any other qualifier. And then I also thought it was interesting in the same TFX qualifier, it was kind of a bigger man qualifier, but then they had some like super high skill gymnastics workouts at the competition that a lot of those guys struggled with. So like maybe the guys that were at the top of the qualifier were at the bottom at the actual competition because some, the workouts didn't necessarily match up. And and I think it was kind of eye-opening this year with the Open going into quarterfinals, how some guys were at the top and some guys were at the bottom, and then it switched once we went into the next stage. Now, whether that be programming bias, that definitely had a lot to do with it, whether that be some dude just going ham during the Open, repeating workouts 2 to 3 weeks while other elites are just taking it easy. I think we saw a little bit of that, and then I think that we saw a little bit of this year, once we got to quarterfinals, it was like, yep, no one cares how you did in the Open, buddy. It's done.
So and just to like caveat some of the points you're making here. So just to provide some data of like the switch in the leaderboard. So in most of the numbers we're going to use for this are based out, or sorry, all the numbers we're going to use off of this is based off of North America only. For example, the switch, Travis Mayer finished 96th worldwide in the Open. Obviously, he won North America and also won the world for the quarterfinals. The last spot, the 120th spot guy in North America, actually finished in 32nd place in the Open and barely qualified for semifinals. He was 120th spot. So that I think goes to show either, this dude like retested a fuckload of the Open workouts, or the programming bias that was elicited this year in the quarterfinals / the Open. But I think more than ever, we saw, I think, some biases inside of the Open and inside of the quarterfinals, just to kind of like pinpoint some of those. Like going into the Open, there was heavy gymnastics or shoulder endurance workout for the first one. And then the following two workouts were basically dictated off of how good your gymnastics were. That burpee speed and that being upper body pulling contractions. So kind of a gymnastics bias there. Then we go into the quarterfinals. The first workout had a gymnastics bias to it, a little bit more of a power output workout on that one, though. Again, heavy shoulder endurance. So it'd be interesting to go back and see if there was a correlation between workout one of the Open and workout one of quarterfinals, and see if there's a correlation between placing or placing on that workout with athletes that did well on that one. Based off of this number here, it doesn't look like it. Travis finished 15 minutes. We rounded up for these, so he finished in 15 minutes. I think it was like 14:48 or something like that for the Open workout. And the Sean Gordon guy finished 13.5. But then when we go to the other workout, Travis was 7 on the dot, again, rounding up or down to the nearest 0.5. And the Sean Gordon guy was 8 minutes on the dot.
Yeah.
Or 8. So probably not a correlation there. But again, that's only a sample size of N equals 2. So
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I had an athlete that, the handstand walk workout was not very good for this individual. And then they did really well on the handstand push-ups. Like it was their second best, workout for the whole quarterfinals. Yeah. But for whatever reason, they just were not very good at wall walks, So it's like, that wasn't really a great test. I mean, say what you like, and I'm not saying that just because I didn't like them in the first place, but if there was more of a correlative effect, I would be like, oh, okay, and I'm not saying there always should be like if you did good on this, you should do on this, but it should be a little bit more positive.
You should almost see like an upward trend of trajectory from the Open to, okay, like this person did really well at like a shoulder endurance workout. Now we see them doing really well on a higher skill shoulder endurance workout. And now we see them doing really well on a higher skill shoulder endurance workout, maybe crazy fatigue or fatigued or something like that.
Right.
Like that would be, in my guess, like a good correlating factor to whether you're choosing, the fittest athletes.
Right. And I mean, everyone kind of like any coach that's ever kind of programmed, or just as you get used to like strengths and weaknesses, there's like correlation between like certain movements. Like for almost all athletes that I've ever worked with, typically, if you're good at handstand push-ups, you typically have good positions, which typically means that you're good at snatching. Now, not always. And the same thing, and I would say even more of a positive correlation would be like elite handstand walking. Not just like the ability to handstand walk, but handstand walking fast typically means you got some pretty good positions, and your T-spine mobility is really good, and you have good shoulder balance, coordination. So I think wall walks is just it's just an interesting one.
Yeah, it's almost more of just a straight up skill of just the wall walk than it is like
Yes, for sure.
over to anything in the sport. At least according to these
Yes.
two data points.
Yeah, which is also fine. Like, it's fine just to have a
Right.
skill just thrown in there.
Right.
But not necessarily as like a stepping stone to something else. I think it should be correlative in some way.
Totally. So I guess looking at the open, just running down with some of these numbers here. The open. So what we did to calculate these guys is we took quarterfinals first place male, quarterfinals last place male. We did this for the females also. And then we added their scores up. We rounded to the nearest 0.5. We added their scores up, took the average of those. We added all those up and then took the average of that number to come up with the average working time for quarterfinal finishers. So we did that in the open as well. For the open, we only calculated the males, but open average finishing time was 11.1, which is kind of spot on with where Logan was saying traditional opens are. But then when we bounce up to quarterfinals, we're at 9.1. This is for males. And then if we add those two together, so if we take the 3 open workouts that we calculated, we didn't do the maxes, and the 4 quarterfinal workouts that we calculated, we end up with a total of 10. So 10 minutes being the average working time for males inside of quarterfinals and the open. So that duration. For females, the quarterfinals was actually 10.8. I didn't do the math on their open finishes, but I would imagine it would probably be 0.5 to a minute slower than males. Because it's about a minute slower, maybe 2 minutes slower on quarterfinals. So that would be, if I had to throw a rough guess out there for females, not calculating that off the top of my head. Or not calculating that and just throwing it off the top of my head, I would guess 1 to 2 minutes slower than that. So 11 to 12 range for that one. But yeah, I totally forgot where I was going with that point. Shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting just to see the change in time domains as you go from the open into quarterfinals. And it's like one of those things where I don't think a lot of people have really taken down the data and realized that. Like there's so much, there's just so much value placed into how you do in qualifiers in the open.
Right.
And then it's just kind of lost in translation of like how different it is once you get there. So I think it's pretty interesting just to see that difference. And people kind of, it's different when you got to throw around a little bit heavier weight, or you have to max out, or I mean, that's the thing with the open. Like, we might get one max. It might be at the end of a workout. We kind of talked about that on our open podcast. It's like, if you're really fitness and you're testing a max at the end of a workout, are you really testing fitness? Or are you just testing yourself? And because that's a skill within CrossFit, is lifting.
Right.
And honestly, it's more of a skill for qualifiers and open workouts, because in actual like in-person competitions, you hardly ever really do that. I'll put it to you this way, it's less frequent. And if you are doing it fatigued, it's maybe like a speed ladder or reps or, something like that. And I think that's why so many people, especially some of my athletes that I've worked with, so many people need to like have a workout before they snatch or clean and jerk or what have you. But like once you get to an in-person competition, you can't do that. And that's why, I mean, I've seen people, they hit, their max snatches, 280, 285, and then they go to a competition and hit 260, well below their max. And I think it's way different when you are fresh. It's way different. You got to be on, and you get, your CNS is just way more fired up at that point. And I think sometimes that scares people.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think,
that performance switch.
yeah. I think too, though, you almost get more of the lifting under fatigue just because of how the sport is set up. So you get
Yeah.
almost more practice at that. And what a lot of CrossFit athletes, I think, don't get a lot of practice at is actually the opposite end of that spectrum, where they have to fire their central nervous system like instantly, like
Yep.
traditional sports. And so they're kind of lacking in that, like, hey, go out here and hit this lift with 3 attempts beforehand or 2 attempts beforehand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely goes to testament of what you're saying about how like the open's a little bit more under fatigue.
Yep.
And it's like a different skill set almost. I think you just practice that a little bit more inside of training, just because
for
of the
sure.
sport set up.
Right. Right. And that's what I try to get, some of my athletes to understand is like, I'm glad that you hit a PR, but I don't want you to have to be hitting a PR exhausted. Like that,
Yeah.
that's just not gonna happen very much in person,
Right.
and you're gonna have to be able to be like, all right, you got 2 attempts in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But I also think that comes with some people not taking their warm-up seriously.
Yes. Yeah.
But
You should be, yeah. Like, I think there's definitely like a skill set between a live competition and open competition. And like like everyone kind of knows it. Like, okay, like I get 2 attempts at this open workout or 3 attempts, however many attempts at this open workout traditionally in the past. But like with the way this quarterfinals was set up, it was run a little bit more like a live competition where you only get 1 shot at a majority of these workouts. So your execution had to be on fucking point with these.
Yeah.
And that is something that I also think comes into play with kind of the difference between traditional open and qualifying competitions. And it could be a difference between what we're seeing here, where male 2 or Sean finishes 32nd in the world, Travis finishes 96. Travis can execute a lot better than Sean can, propels him up the leaderboard inside of a competition. So that's also almost like a performance skill that you have to have in competitions where personally I think a lot more people thrive under that than they do inside of an open setting. And maybe that's just the athletes that I coach, and my coaching bias is getting people to be really good at live competitions. It's just like, because that's, in my opinion, that's where the sport is the live competitions, and it's not necessarily the qualifier. Like the qualifier is just their type thing.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It sucks because like I know people who would compete at a lot of these like live competitions really, really well. It's just like, for whatever reason, the way that the system is set up for online qualifiers, where there's multiple attempts or several attempts at these workouts, like it just doesn't allow them to be able to elicit that performance, if that makes sense, or show off their ability to perform at these live competitions.
Yeah. And I've always said that, qualifiers in the open may be a better just brute test of fitness. It might show, who actually has, can hit this time domain, who can hold this pace for so long. It might, but does it like display the best competitors? No. Just because I know people that, you can't repeat in-person competitions, and that's so much of competing, is the little tiny things that in the open you might forget about, and then your coach, or you look back on your video, or like, oh, I did this and this. It's like, well, I mean, I can redo it, so in person it's like you got to be so much more prepared, which I loved. And especially I liked it because like you could repeat these workouts, but it was going to dramatically affect the rest of the weekend. So it's like, do I repeat it? Do I not? So yeah, it was just I really liked the format of it. And I think it's just going to make people just become a lot more prepared.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to make people take their tapering more seriously into a competition or quarterfinals. And it's going to make people realize what the Open is now. And all it is a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Into, if you only have so many matches to burn, like if you go hard in the Open for 3 weeks, you rest a weekend, and then you got, it was a lot. It was basically a 3-4 day competition.
Right.
If you started on, Thursday and went all the way through, like that's a lot.
Right.
And if you sell your soul 3 weeks in a row, I want to be able to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah, it was an interesting format. It would be nice if they started to move to this format for all online competitions where they're giving shorter windows to complete their workouts.
Yep.
And even if it's like a 2-day window with 2 workouts, like I think that's, or like a day and a half window with 2 workouts, like I think that would be a pretty good format as well. Because that's basically what this. Well, I guess it was a day, or for the first 2. Because they released them like 3 hours early or something like that. But yeah, that would be a much better, like you would probably get people at your competitions that were much better performers, which in the end would lead to a better show, which would probably lead to a better run competition or more viewer friendly competition, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't get like photo finishes in the sport anymore, minus Wadapalooza team in 2020.
Team is a lot more close for sure.
Right. And I feel like that's like why people want to watch races, is like to see how close something actually comes down. Like Wadapalooza team 2020 was literally 0.2 seconds or something like that. It's the separation between the third place team getting first place, the second place team getting first place, beating Rich's team. And then Rich getting like losing the competition. And the third place came in between those two by 0.2 seconds. So it's just like shit like that is like super fun to watch. And if you're bringing the best performers to the competition, because in team, there's a little bit more wiggle room for I shouldn't say poor performances, but underperformance maybe inside of online qualifiers. And then when you get to because it's a little bit, you have 4 people, somebody else pick up the score. The field isn't as dense. So you have a little bit more wiggle room. So you are probably bringing some of the best performers to your competition, which makes it a little bit more fun to watch in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And then once you get to the competition, it's tight. It's really jammed up.
Right. Yeah. So I do like this format. I think it'll probably bring some of the best competitors to the competition and performers. I think there's it'll just be it was cool to watch this format play out. It was a little bit crazy, like day of so many, like Saturday at the gym was just fucking chaos. It was like the most members at Venture, and then we had there, and then we had like everybody in town. So it was just fucking, it was nuts.
Crazy. It's so crazy because it's like you got like it's the quarterfinals are so much different than the Open because the strategies for the quarterfinal workouts, as far as just like the athletes you have or athlete to athlete, could be totally different. Just because the Open workout, it's like they're very simple. It's like, am I gonna break? Am I gonna go singles? Am I gonna do I have muscle ups? Do I not? But this one was just like, I liked it, but it was just like, man, it was so individualized,
right,
on how you're gonna attack it.
Yeah, like especially on the strict handstand push-up one, I think people fell into the trap of like, oh, it's only 30 reps, like, and then I get to use my legs to kip. When in reality, it was like, do you have the capacity to do 30 reps inside of a minute and 15 window? With other fatigue factors on your shoulders, and then still be able to use your kip out of handstand push-ups and do dumbbell shoulder to overhead. So I think that was a little bit of a trap workout for most people. Yep. Where that one could have been individualized a little bit more on where you're breaking those strict handstand push-ups up.
Yeah.
And you go a little bit longer on the first set to give you, up to a minute off on that second 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And I think people kind of fell into the trap of like, just come out hot, you get a minute rest. Like,
yeah, a minute's not very much.
Right. We saw that. You and we actually took one of my clients, Ken, and he finished 20 seconds faster on 12.3 by slowing himself down in his faster in the toes to bar and chest to portions of his workout. He actually went 20 seconds faster and then 15 to 17 pounds heavier on his lift. So, I think people need to look at those workouts as like, yeah, it looks pretty simple, but like it can also be a trap workout if it looks simple.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you were just to do 30 unbroken strict handstand push-ups, your shoulders be pretty lit,
Yes.
So like take that into account with, it's 150 dubs,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Very and if you're quick. An individual who is pretty tense on the dubs, like you're not getting a whole lot of relaxing in your shoulders during those hang power cleans or double unders. So
right, exactly.
Yeah. One other kind of thing that I thought was a pretty interesting here was the fact that the discrepancy in female scores were just a little bit it's almost like, so in quarterfinals almost 2 minutes. I think that is either testament to or like the two ideas that kind of pop up into my head are the subset of workouts that the Open selected for athletes was a little bit more of a gymnastics bias. So you might have had smaller females, and then that last barbell I think was a little bit more problematic for females than it was for males. Whether the ratio of the weights were off, which in my opinion, I don't think they were. I think the females need to be lifting a little bit more in the sport. Or the density of the field isn't as high. And then I think you can also account for some of the factor that males just have, because they have pecs, have a little bit more upper body muscle mass. So these were, pushing heavy workout, an upper body pushing heavy workout, a little bit of like upper body pulling with that 15-foot rope. And then I guess pull longer length, usually on the rower, just generate a little bit more power on that.
Yeah, that was
obviously the barbell, and women had to jump to the 30-inch box. So that, I'm sure that obviously played a factor into it as well.
Yeah, especially selecting for a smaller set of, or a smaller set of females. Having a 30-inch box, it's like, dang.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amanda's like 5'7". She almost killed herself on it. So yeah, it was I think that was interesting. I think that's probably like a few subsects, and like I guess training like takeaways from that are, and I traditionally do this with females already, is like they get a lot of upper body pressing, they get a lot of upper body pulling, and it stays in their program year round. Whereas like some guys, we can put it a little bit more on maintenance. Like we've done that with you in the past, Logan, where we've put some of your upper body pressing stuff on maintenance and worked on some other things. Again, this is definitely athlete dependent. But traditionally, like females need just heavier shoulder volume throughout the year, just because they tend to be lacking in that relative to guys in the sport. I think you could probably list a multitude of reasons for that. But I think females in general just need that in their design a little bit more than males do. I don't know if that's what you've seen as well. Or...
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like handstand push-ups. I would say just like strict press. It's just a lot. Just even comparatively, like kind of the gold standard is being able to strict press your body weight, and way more guys can do that than females, so that relative strength is just, not there quite as much.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's something that you definitely want to try and like develop, like even traditional bodybuilding routines. Like I'll leave that in for a lot of females.
Yeah.
You're just like trying to build bigger delts, trying to build bigger triceps, like lots of horizontal pressing with the rings to get out of muscle ups.
Yep.
Lots of weighted pull-ups, wide grip weighted pull-ups to develop the lats. But yeah, what are some training qualities that you kind of took away from the open and quarterfinals this year for some of your athletes?
I would say I would say prepping intensity more.
Okay.
Just for the subset of workouts. And I took a big gamble on a lot of my clients and thought that this is what the workouts were going to be like, and it paid off.
Yeah.
And so I basically trained every one of them that I knew would make it through the open, basically for a live competition. Or I was kind of using the master qualifier events as like a template for what I thought the workouts were going to be. They were way different, but they definitely were more on par than like compared to like open workouts. I wasn't just like me in general, just my programming bias. I like leaving in squats a lot, especially for maintenance. I think there was like a statistic out there that said like 30% of all CrossFit workouts involve some sort of squat. So I always just leave in front squats, back squats at least once a week for all athletes.
Is that heavy or is that
like over 70%.
Yeah.
Just like some touches on it. So that was nice to see pop up. Yeah. I mean, I prepped most of them for a lot of upper body pulling. But I mean, there wasn't that much in quarterfinals. But definitely, for some reason, I just had a feeling that they weren't going to do legless. So I prepped a lot of my athletes for, to use their legs on rope climbs. I just thought from a judging standpoint, they just won it and they didn't. And then, I think the only thing that I would probably change would just be, shorter workouts. I don't think I gave that many short workouts. I probably, I think the short workout that I would program to prep for was maybe like 5 to 8 minutes, and then most of like, depending on the athlete, most of them were just, kind of that 12 to 15 minute range. And I was expecting like a huge volume of handstand walks.
They threw in that 30 feet.
Yeah, they threw in that 30 feet. And then I also prepped a lot for lunging. Especially overhead lunging. I just thought that it's going to come one day. It's going to come one day. And so, I prepped for that a lot. And I just thought that, okay, they had a lot of wall walks, like tons of wall walks. So it'd make sense if they had a workout with tons of handstand walks.
Right.
But yeah, I think from a programming standpoint next year, I'd probably give them a way bigger taper. And I would literally beg them to only do the workouts of the open once.
One time.
Yeah, like, please. Yeah, please.
Even if you finish outside of the top 10 percentile of the first one, you're still good.
Yeah, you're still good. And just like an aggressive taper. But it's always so hard. It's like, what if next year it's totally different?
I mean, that's the thing. Is like, is our quarterfinals even going to be a thing next year? Like, I would assume that they're going to be, but like,
God, I hope so. I hope they just leave it the same.
Right. But now that like all like in theory, all gyms should be open next year. So like, are you going to incorporate hanging from a bar? Like, now it's super interesting to see that was not in at all.
No.
Are you going to incorporate rings into the workouts, ring dips, ring muscle ups? Like, you had it in your equipment list. Is that equipment to stay standard for, next year. It's kind of we're almost in like as CrossFitters, we're almost like, okay, cool little format. Like what's it gonna do next year? Like waiting for the teams, because there's been no at all. But yeah, I think so like one thing that I liked to try and do is give people like little stingers right before open workouts. And I think that helped a little bit with prepping people for the faster workout. Granted, I only had a couple of guys that really would have played a factor into. It was more, the females were more of, just kind of grind this workout out because of those box jump overs, and the snatches being a little bit heavier. So, I think the stingers were probably pretty good for that. Some things that I'm learning are just crazy amounts of volume and contraction from a GHD standpoint. We saw 150 in the games, and then all of a sudden we're seeing 180 for quarterfinals. So same thing with pistols, just like prepping the volume for that. I'm gonna have to just develop a lot more squat contractions for people in general, and like probably lower body volume contractions in case they go to a high volume lower body pulling contraction or high volume upper body contraction, just so that they can sustain that throughout the course of the weekend. So probably looking at building some sort of like accumulation phase up into the 125, 150 range for a lot of these movements to start the season out, or like even like 200 to 300 squat contractions inside of a session, and upping the kind of the volume over the course of a like quote unquote accumulation phase, is probably something that I'll look to do throughout this year. Also like intensity, just developing a little bit more intensity inside of workouts. So almost trying to get, sorry, I've just been talking, Logan. So almost trying to get like people together for Friday Night Lights, or like even the 2 weeks before quarterfinals, like getting people together to do like a camp or something like that, or a prep of like, hey, this is how intense these like quarterfinal style workouts need to be. And just like trying to build in some sort of intensity for people, kind of like what Logan was talking about, of like, okay, look, yeah, there's 150 GHD sit-ups in this workout, but like this workout has to be fast. Like you have to move fast on the GHD sit-ups. Like it can't just be a slow, like my goal is to finish this workout. Like, no, you have to move fast. And even if the time cap is aggressive, you're trying to get as many reps done as you possibly can inside of that time cap. So I think if you can do these quarterfinals like with people, that'll, with a group, like we had a couple of people down here be like, yeah, there's no way I would have pushed that hard by myself. So finding like a group of people to do these workouts with would be huge. For that purpose. But also density of like handstand push-ups. I'm probably going to throw that tester in a little bit more, like 30 to 50 5-minute. I'm probably going to throw that in a little bit more. Maybe even 30 strict, 30 kipping for time, more 50-50. I've seen that one. Just kind of like not necessarily creating those, but almost like bringing them back into training. It's almost like pulling old stuff that I kind of used to use and bring it back to the forefront of training. Just kind of like prepping people with some testers that I've used, 6-7 years ago. And just kind of working on those again, just to kind of see where people are at and developing some of those abilities.
I think I actually gave, or one of the ones that I do is typically like 50, depending, this is like athlete dependent, but at the elite level, like 50 strict handstand push-ups, rest 5 minutes, 50 kipping, rest 5 minutes, 300 foot handstand walk. And or I might do like a 5-minute AMRAP, rest 5 minutes, 5-minute AMRAP, and then 300 foot handstand walk. But yeah, just that shoulder density. I mean, obviously they tested it, so it's gotta do it. And
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think with like, if you're looking at like layering the testing too, from like an athlete standpoint, like you can almost start off with like, hey, 5-minute MRAP fresh of strict handstand push-ups. And then if your athlete was like good and they have the density to do the handstand push-ups inside of, like that 6 to 7 minute window that first workout was, now you start looking at layering on the density of like 5-minute AMRAP strict, 5-minute AMRAP kipping, 5-minute or 300 handstand walk for time. So like almost like trying to layer the density of the contractions on a little bit slower, if that makes sense, depending on where your athlete is.
Yeah. And I would say for a lot of athletes that a lot of athletes do, especially open athletes, have a density issue. So like in an open, like you might have like 10 reps at a time, 5 reps at a time, freaking 4 reps at a time. And a lot of people might have an issue with doing, 25 unbroken, 25 straight, 50 straight, 50 straight at the end of a workout. Like it's a very common problem.
Right.
Just as far as being able to do a lot in a row or a lot unbroken. And it's pretty surprising, actually. Like some people that, were pretty, I mean, they still are high level, but it's like, you can't do that many unbroken,
Yeah.
Or, within a, 50 under a certain amount of time. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. And, that's what, that's why, just training and programming is so interesting, because it's like you can have someone be really good at a skill with this or in this kind of, programmed fashion, but then you take it over here and they're not very good, Like there was like a time where I'm pretty proficient at ring muscle ups, pretty proficient at strict handstand push-ups, but then there was a workout where they were like together and it like blew me up, and like we figured out that I wasn't like kipping my dip properly,
Right.
It's like it's very complex.
And those are like the little things that make the sport fun too.
For sure.
But what like, I guess too, like, we're talking a lot about gymnastics density, and a lot of that is because there were 2 pretty heavy shoulder endurance workouts and a shoulder. There was in the first open workout, a little bit in the second open workout, and then for sure in that first quarterfinals workout. And then you could actually go back to the 21.4 with the shoulder to overhead at the end of that gymnastics piece, and your dip is actually worn out there a little bit too from those more than likely bar muscle ups and the thrusters. So there was a lot of just shoulder density in this quarterfinals and open like setting. So that's kind of why we're talking about like gymnastics density and handstand push-up density a little bit more. But one thing we also have to remember is like, there was in my opinion, there was some pretty clear biases in this year's selection of workouts from the open, and even some more clear biases inside of the quarterfinals. And again, this is only a subset of 8 workouts that you're looking at. So you can't only just take this and prep somebody for these subset of workouts. Like it has to be a prep for fitness in general, and like making sure that you're taking a look back at years in the past, and pulling data from years in the past and looking at what other competitions are doing to set the new stage of fitness and like progress fitness, and taking from those as well, because you don't just want to prep somebody to get really good at strict handstand push-ups and then next year they don't have strict handstand push-ups.
I think if anything, if you can take the test from quarterfinals, figure out where the athlete was and work on the basis of the thing that was lacking, that's a lot better way of doing it. So like I was talking to one of my athletes that struggled with the GHD sit-up. Yes, I'm going to make him do more GHD sit-ups, but I'm also really going to concentrate on developing like his hip flexor strength and endurance. Because I just think that for me personally, when I did that, they felt way better. And it's just very, very different. And it's so like, if you were, a lot of people think it's your core, but most of the time, yes, it is a lot of core, but most of the time it's really your hips. Like if you've ever done GHD sit-ups into muscle ups, it's like all my power is gone. It's because you can't use your hips.
Right.
So like approaching it like that, or I mean, the front squat, that's just a lot more. Okay, people at the elite level, they're squatting this. I need to squat that,
Yeah.
And then just taking apart. Okay, we need to increase some leg strength, or or it gives you an insight like, hey, like, with some of my athletes that squatted a lot, it's like maybe I can give them even less squatting and we'll be okay.
Right. Right. Yeah. The raw strength numbers are a little bit easier to dissect from a data point, and like what you like need to work on in those.
Right.
It's like the combinations of movements, the fatigue factor that pops up inside of whatever the given workout is, why that fatigue factor is popping up for that athlete, and like how do we train that is all like, and will that carry over into other things inside the sport? Like obviously if you train somebody's hip flexors, their squat more than likely actually might go up. Their toes to bar volume is going to get better. Their abdominal wall is just going to get stronger in general. So that transfers over into a lot inside the sport. They actually might start to develop more power out of their kipping motions as well. So like all that will transfer over into the sport, boiling it down to one little aspect of the sport.
Like if you work on the basis of the issue, it's going to translate to a lot of stuff. And just like I'm telling you, if you do GHDs or something every day, you will develop hip and back pain. Trust me. I would know.
Please don't just do the thing that you suck at or aren't good at over and over and over again, because that's a great way to get some sort of overuse injury.
Like I had some athletes like, I want you to give me wall walks like every other day. I'm like, I'm not going to give you wall walks. That's
like
waste of time. We'll work on other things.
That'll
get you better at it indirectly.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any other thoughts here? Or?
No, I mean, I think I just wish that there was, I mean, I know there's not, but with every new phase of that competition, I guess, selection for the games, CrossFit throws out, there's different biases, and it would be nice to just have, this is what the sport looks like. This is how you prepare the athletes, just have a little bit of a clear cut. But I mean, like I said, like if you just approach it to where it's not, you're training all year to get better at the 5 quarterfinal workouts from last year, I think you'll be in a pretty good spot. And if anything, it just like if you know how to take the test and take the data and use it for good, and be able to dissect it properly, then even if you came up short, it'll be a positive thing in your training.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you and I differ a little bit on that. I don't want to see any preparation for like these are the tests that will, or the time domains or anything.
See, I wish it was. I wish you knew exactly the event.
I like the chaos of it, and just like almost like you just can't have any workouts that scare you. Like literally no workouts that scare you. I kind of like that aspect of it. But cool. What was that?
No.
Okay.
I got nothing. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for listening, guys. If you guys are watching on YouTube, we'll have a higher quality video out for next time, hopefully. But hit the subscribe button, hit the alert button. We're putting out some more training videos and just kind of some fun stuff. You guys can see some of the team stuff that Logan's participating in, heading up to quarterfinals next week, and then hopefully they qualify for semis. So you'll get a kind of an insight into what they're doing for training leading into those. And if you guys are watching on a different streaming podcast app, if you guys can follow us on Instagram, blacklisted.hq. If you want to follow us on YouTube, hit us, give us a subscribe and the alert button. That'd be great. And if you guys ever want any coaching help or need any coaching help, feel free to reach out. We would love to help. So thanks for coming on, Logan. And we'll catch you guys next time.